Hello, as you know, I am Joe Powell, Chief Executive of All Wales People First, and this is another one of my video addresses to the members, which I promised to do in our mirror strategy. That's our business plan from 2019 to 2023. Today, I'm making a video to mark the 10th anniversary of my post as Chief Executive, which happens on the 9th of October 2022. And the reason I think it's important to mark this is because this is something I think the members themselves, particularly the National Council, have achieved. And of course, I'm privileged and honoured to be that person. But make no mistake about it, the achievement has been the members and that of the National Council. And I think it would be wrong not to mark that somehow. I'm not a person who likes to fly his own flag in terms of stuff that I've done or haven't done and what have you. So I was in two minds whether to do a video address for the 10th anniversary. But then again, I just reminded myself that actually this is an All Wales People First achievement, and it would be wrong not to acknowledge that. For those of you not aware of the history, in our 2012 business plan, which was called The Way Forward, the National Council, along with Yvonne Boxhall, who was the advisor at the time, decided that as a member-led organisation, it would be only right, if we're truly member-led, to have somebody with lived experience to head the organisation. A lot of time, a lot of effort went into creating the post. An advertisement went out, you can't see much there, for what they called a national director to head the organisation. The reason that the job was called National Director and not just Director was because we had a board of directors, and it was to make sure people didn't get confused between the two. I remember personally when I first saw the advert, being encouraged by Bernard Pearson, who was my life coach at the time, support worker life coach, and my dad, but being really bowled over, because in those days I used to talk about individual budgets and people working themselves out of a job. And I remember the first thing I thought when I saw this was, wow, somebody's actually going to do this. Somebody's actually not going to just work themselves out of a job, but create a senior post for somebody with lived experience. And I remember that making a big impression on me. If I was honest, I didn't have much knowledge of what People First was. Ironically, back in those days, I used to go to a local advocacy organisation in Torvine whilst I was fighting to leave the care service, and they shared the building with an organisation called Torvine People First. So I'd heard of Torvine People First, and I knew it had something to do with learning disabilities, but I didn't really truly know what it was. In terms of this job, I was in two minds whether to go for it. And that was quite simply because even back then, even though it wasn't as complicated as it is now, even back then, knowing what you'd been entitled to with benefits or not was very unclear, and you couldn't get a straight answer from anybody. You could either be on benefits and be completely dependent, or you could go out and work into the workplace, try the workplace, and be left on your own. And there was no security either way. I remember thinking to myself, well, I was dog sitting at my parents' house in Gateshead whilst they went on holiday. And I remember I just started to write out and fill out the application form. Wasn't sure whether to go for the job or not. And my dad and Bernard Pearson looked at the application and they said, look, it's a good application, but we understand why you might not want to put that forward and put that through. And I remember contacting them both saying, I've decided I'm not going to go for the post, just because it's too insecure whether or not, I'm going to get the benefits back or what's going to happen with that. And I just remember then, a day or two later, it just occurred to me, well, let's just put the application in and see what happens. If you say no, you'll never know. If you say yes, then, at least you know where it's going to lead. And I remember the first thing I remember about the interviews going forward, 2-day interview process, lots of people there, and there were a lot of robust exercises such as a PowerPoint presentation, us being marked and evaluated, how well we mixed and spoke to each other and had discussions and topics. and obviously the interview process itself. Um, what really stood out with me on those 2 days was, I think, firstly, how welcome I was made to feel. I didn't know anybody in the movement. Everybody seemed to know each other, apart from one or two people who were maybe from outside. Everybody else was from People First. I remember Lucy Hinksman, taking me over and helping me to mix in with members I've never met before, and other candidates like Jonathan Richards and Darren Locke. And that made a big difference to me. So I appreciate Lucy doing that. I've never forgotten Lucy doing that. It was really nice of her. I remember after the first day of the interview process, when we did the exercises, we all as candidates decided to go off together in the evening to do some social things at the Red Dragon Centre in Cardiff. And I just remember it being a really positive, warm experience, and everybody there feeling welcomed, fitting in. And it was like I'd known everybody there all my life. It was amazing. I wasn't expecting it, but it was great. It was just, it was really, really good. And that in itself was worth coming for. I remember as well that my motivation as well when I arrived there was, you know what, I just want to do a good job, and I just want to do myself justice in an interview process, because I believe in fate. If you're meant to get it, then you're meant to get it. If you're not meant to get it, then I hope I don't let myself down, and I do myself justice. And, even if you don't get the job, then I still think you're fated to be there to help the process and that person to get the job. Obviously, as we know, I did get the job, and it's been a major honour ever since. And I don't want to say too much, because we have a Joe's Soapbox article which goes into more details about that. But what I can honestly say is that 10 years later, I'm not any different to who I was back then. I don't think, in terms of my burning anger about an unfair system, an unjust system. I still feel very much like a service user who was in care. I still feel very angry about the issues, and I'm certainly very alert and very aware of the issues. Unfortunately, I can't click my fingers and make everything wonderful, because nobody can. All we can keep doing is fighting and fighting together, which is what we try to do. I think the National Council, more than anybody, deserves credit, because they laid out this idea in the 2012 business plan, the idea of getting rid of the officers and putting the money into the membership activities, such as the National Council, which during a time of governments realising we've got to use funding better, went a long way. It showed we were ahead of the curve and we were innovative. And to have a leader with lived experience, to me, made a major, bold statement about all Wales People First and its values. I mean, I was saddened to hear, shortly after I got the job, that there were a lot of people sceptical about the job and whether it could work. And maybe even in some cases, some people not wanting it to work. And that really saddens me, not because it was me who ultimately got the job, but because it just shows again this lack of expectation we have with people with learning disabilities, autism. We assume people can't do things, but the National Council believed we could, and it happened. And I believe all Wales People First deserved a lot of credit for doing that, because whatever happened, whether this worked or didn't work, obviously we all wanted it to work, because why would you do it otherwise? But even if it hadn't have worked, I think all Wales People First deserved credit for trying to put their money where their mouth is and saying, we believe in the leadership of somebody with lived experience. So, it's testament to all Wales People First. It's testament to the National Council. Obviously, a lot of work was done before the job went out to interview. This just didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of thought into how this was going to be done. There was a lot of thought on how we're going to make this work. Because for all Wales People First, this was uncharted territory. We'd never been here before. And whoever got my job was going to need different support, depending on who they were and what they needed. So, it was a bold and brave move, especially when you consider we had somebody like Yvonne Boxall, who was already doing a great job, and there was no need to replace Yvonne in terms of the job she was doing. The only reason, really, or the main reason, was because, we had the values of being member-led and somebody who lived experience running the organisation. It would have been much easier just to have stayed with Yvonne, who was doing a wonderful job. I think since that and we've built on. I think the organisation has got bigger, and we've moved on. We've built on the brilliant foundations that Yvonne laid down, the National Council, the Always People First staff team. We've built onto that, and I think we've very much kept those important values of the organisation at our heart, and obviously we will continue to do so. But I think the biggest reason I wanted to make a video on my appointment was just to say thank you to members. And I don't just mean thank you for having a job and giving me whatever. I mean just thank you for accepting me. I didn't come from People First. I was an outsider. You didn't know me from Adam, but I was able to develop and grow in the job over time because you supported me and you were behind me, and that means a lot. So, I just want to say a big thank you from me for that. It's most appreciated. I've not forgot where I've come from in terms of, as I say, those injustices and that unfair system. And I'm certainly just as resolved and just as determined to fight against those inequalities as I ever was, and to work with you and fight with you for that. So thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the People First family. And I'll continue to give you my very best in the future. And I can also speak for the All Wales staff team who are amazing. No chief executive is anything without a good staff team. And we all work together really hard with the National Council to do our very, very best, and we'll keep on doing so. Victory for self-advocacy. Thank you once more.